Hi everybody, this is Kara Choate, and this is my audience. My brother, my mom, my husband. Yeah, great. Today I'm going to talk to you about a subject you might not think about on a regular basis, but it's still important to our pop culture. I'm talking about sci-fi. Now, I have a confession to make. I'm a Trekkie. One of my earliest memories is sitting with my mom in our tiny living room, eating sandwiches and watching episodes of DS9. I mean, it was serious. I knew what a Cardassian was before I knew how to tell time. My first TV crush was Brent Spiner as Lieutenant Commander Data. All right. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a fan of sci-fi, whether or not you care. It is impossible to deny that these shows have contributed a whole lot to our culture, particularly Star Trek and Star Wars, is what I'm going to talk to you about today. You're going to see traces of that in TV shows like The Big Bang Theory. You're going to see it references in things like Supernatural. I've even heard a couple in CSI. So you're going to hear things like references in everyday conversations with quotes like "Beam me up, Scotty," or "Use the Force," or "I am your father." Now, what made me choose this topic is that too often well-meaning individuals in everyday conversation will butcher and mess up references to Star Trek and Star Wars, get them mixed up, and it's kind of sad. It kind of makes me cringe. And I'm going to clear a few things up today. It's going to help you get some references that you might not have gotten before, and it's going to help you converse with that special sci-fi dork in your life. Now, the main points I'm going to go over, first of all, we've got our backstories, and we'll just set the scene for you a little bit. Then I'm going to compare the content, and then we're going to talk about movies versus shows, the way the different franchises deliver their stories. All right, so let's begin with a quick overview of the basic plots here. With Star Trek, it's going to be a bit more complicated. They go into issues such as technology, how it works, philosophical debates, things like that. For example, after Star Trek also takes place in the future, as opposed to Star Wars, which is going to take place in the past. Now, I know that sounds crazy. All of that technology that you see in Star Wars, how can that possibly be in the past? Well, the famous opening crawl in the beginning of Star Wars came out in 1977. It actually sets the stage by saying that the story takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Now, there are many inhabited planets in Star Wars. Some of them are very Earth-like, but no mention is ever made of Earth in the solar system. Star Trek, on the other hand, if we're going to contrast, like I said, it takes place in the future. After a devastating Third World War, it causes a nuclear winter. Humans kind of get themselves handled, get it together, and they work towards a lot of common goals, including a space flight program, which catches the attention of some peaceful aliens called Vulcans, who make first contact. Now, eventually, a utopian alliance of planets called the Federation is formed, with Earth as its capital. So, bundle that all up into a nutshell. Star Wars tries to separate itself from our world as much as possible. It doesn't leave any link to modern day Earth. Now, Star Trek, on the other hand, Earth's history, or their history, our future, it's vital to the storyline. There's all kinds of Earth culture in it. Now that we've talked about plots a little bit, let's talk about overall content. Star Wars is very straightforward. You've got your overarching theme of dark versus light, good versus evil, yada, yada, yada. In Star Wars, the antagonists are perpetuators of what they call the dark side of the Force. They are known as the Sith, and the perpetuators of the light side, they're the heroes of the story, and they're known as Jedi. Now, the leaders of the dark side are tyrannical, their methods are violent. Emperor Palpatine kills people to get into his position. Darth Vader blows up a planet just as a method of interrogating somebody, just to show him he means business. On the other hand, the Jedi, they're peaceful and they're law-abiding as much as possible. They live by a strict code. They avoid situations that could lead to destructive emotions, like romantic relationships, for instance. So they mean business. They are the best good guys they can be. Like I said, so very black and white with Star Wars. Now, when it comes to Star Trek, things get complicated. There are lots of different antagonists throughout. The science is explored. They do talk philosophy. Unlike Star Wars, Star Trek goes into the explanation of technology a little bit more. They talk about how they replicate food using raw molecules, how they travel at warp speed by creating rifts in subspace. It gets complicated when it comes to the technology. When it comes to the content as far as their debates, their dilemmas. In one episode of Star Trek, they invent a virus. Now, this virus could wipe out an entire group called the Borg. Now, the Borg exist by terrorizing, abducting, and assimilating people. They are made up of a lot of different species who are mutilated and mentally enslaved. So they're bad people. They're bad. Now, the issue is they could wipe out the Borg with this virus, but if they do it, is it genocide? And if they do it, is it wrong? So issues like that, they're complicated. There are so many different ways to approach them. So, in short, the content of Star Wars is a lot simpler than the content of Star Trek. You've got your good versus evil, plain night and day, and then you've got your technology and your philosophy over in Star Trek. Excuse me. Now that we've kind of really gotten into the content, let's lighten it up a little bit, talk delivery methods. Once again, Star Wars proves a little bit less complicated. You've got your movies. I'm not going to get into books. They've both got their books. You're never ever going to have to talk about books. Just ignore that right now. Star Wars is movies. Now, they're not all in order, but they keep it pretty uncomplicated that way. As long as you pay attention to the numbers associated with the titles on the movies, you're pretty straightforward. You can figure out what order they're going to go in. For an example, the first movie, made in 1997, features a grown Luke Skywalker, son of Anakin Skywalker. Now, in Star Wars Episode 1, made all the way later in 1999, the child Anakin is saved from a life of indentured servitude on a desert planet, where then he becomes a little Jedi trainee, basically, known as a Padawan. So like I said, out of order. But that's nothing compared to Star Trek. They are made up of many different TV show series and movies. And that's one of the reasons that Star Trek gets so much more complicated when it comes to its plots and its issues, is you've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more different TV series that all contribute to each other and have to interact, or at least provide some kind of continuity. And that's not even including the movies. So, let's just go over the basics one last time, make sure we've got everything straight. Star Wars versus Star Trek, two different things. They contribute a lot to our culture, and it's good to know the basics. Main points. Star Wars, set in the past. Star Trek, set in the future. One is a basic good versus evil story. The other one is more about the science and the philosophy. And lastly, Star Wars, movies, Star Trek, movies and shows. So, when it all comes down to it, you've got your basics, you know the difference. Maybe it'll help you interact and get more in the future as you are hearing references and having conversations. So with that, live long and prosper. You'll do great.